Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber with the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast. Today I have a really interesting interview, a really special guest. A very busy, active studio and touring musician out of Nashville, Pete Ferguson. Yeah, he's played with a number of artists, a number of up-and-coming artists that have singles, and we'll get to talk about some of that. And he's a very well-thought-out, really sharp, young, up-and-coming player himself. So I'm looking forward to this, and I've been wanting to talk to Pete. Pete, thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Glad to be here.
Hey, quick, what's the last music you listened to before our conversation?
The last music I listened to was Wes Montgomery, the incredible jazz guitar of Wes Montgomery.
Interesting. Is there a lot of country guys listening to Wes Montgomery?
Yeah, I think that. I mean, I'd say it depends on who you ask. There's a lot of country guys who don't want a thing to do with jazz music, and there's a lot of country guys that really love the western swing tradition that kind of Johnny Smith was a crossover guitar player in, and so I know a couple other dudes who like jazz, and I think that's cool, and I like jazz a lot. So
very cool. It wasn't I thought I read something recently that Gibson first developed the first hollow-bodied electric for Wes Montgomery. Is that?
I wouldn't be able to verify that or prove it false, but I know that Gibson was making archtop guitars before Wes Montgomery came along.
Okay, it was probably somebody else then. All righty, so you got a ton of projects that you are working on now. What do you? And I'm sure you're excited about all of them, but is there one in particular that you're most excited about?
Let's see. I mainly work as a sideman with artists, and some of these artists I work with very consistently. And I'd say there are two right now that I'm particularly jazzed about. One of those is Fiona Coley, with her artist project. She's a country singer out of Nashville, and she's originally from England, so she's a Brit. And I'm currently out on radio tour with her, and will be for the next 2 months or so. And we're out there promoting her single "Act Like a Lady," along with a couple other tunes to radio. And it's exciting. It's an exciting time for a new artist to be out there on radio tour and pushing their music to radio. And she's getting a great response from most of these stations. So, it's a real exciting time for her.
Awesome. And what was the other one? You said there was two.
The other one is an artist that I started working with back in January. Her name is Mags Duvall. She's also Nashville-based. She's a pop artist. I describe her as kind of a cross between kind of like a Lana Del Rey Lorde vibe. And pop artist. I play keys and guitar for her, and sometimes I music direct for her as well. And she's not actively touring, but I just really like her music a lot, and would love to see it go somewhere. So anytime she releases something, she just released a tune called Plain Jane, and I think it's great, and I would love to see her stuff go somewhere. So both of those artists are a lot of fun to work with. That's Fiona Coley and Mags Duvall.
Let's talk about the Fiona Coley one a little bit, since I know she's trending, if you want to call it that. How does a project like that originally come about? Like, how do you get turned on to that? Or how does she get turned on to you?
Right. This is always funny. I actually had an ex-girlfriend once. I was in a season, which these seasons come along quite a bit, where there's not much work. And it's like, man, like what am I doing with my life? Like, no one's calling, the phone's not ringing. There's no like textbook on how to become a sideman guitar player, or to just like get hired. Like, there's no tried and true route. Everyone kind of goes about it their own way. There's some patterns, and sometimes those patterns don't work at all. And I was in one of those seasons where it wasn't working at all, and I was complaining to my girlfriend about it, because that's kind of, I guess, what you do sometimes.
Sure.
And her background was musical theater, where there's a ton of infrastructure about how to like get work, and you live in New York and you go to these auditions during audition season, and like the auditions are posted everywhere. And she said, well, why don't you just go to an audition? And I was like, I love to go to auditions, and I get called for them like a couple times a year, and you don't just like show up, it's like totally different. So anyway, to answer your question, like how that work comes about is like totally like it's different for everything. And with Fiona Coley in particular, I met Fiona. I play a church gig out in Lebanon, Tennessee occasionally, and she started working there after I was there for a couple months, and a couple months later she asked me if I was available to do a gig with her, and I was, and since then I've been working with her.
Wow. So you guys just randomly met because you played at the same church? Right,
yeah, and she had her artist thing going, and then kind of one thing led to another, and next thing I know, like I'm out on radio tour with her, and doing showcases and stuff. And in contrast, the Mags Duvall that I was speaking about, I auditioned for that gig. Like I got a call and showed up with my stuff and played for them, and they said, all right, we'll call you. and it worked out, which is awesome, and that's like, sometimes it doesn't work out, oftentimes it doesn't work out. So point being, there's no tried and true, like, this is how you, like, here's like step one, here's the place to go. Like, it's not like getting your passport,
Yeah, for sure. So when you say, just because I think this is interesting and a lot of people don't know this is kind of like the inside, how it workings. You said you got a call to audition for Mags. Like, who did you get a call from? How did that person get a hold of you?
Right, and this totally highlights it. Like, I got a call from Johnny, who does her like live show development and touring support type stuff. And Johnny got my number from a friend of mine named Jess Gromit, who's a guitar player, and they were looking for somebody that was specifically like a strong guitar player, but also had knowledge of like keyboard playing and synth programming and triggering samples, all of which I did have knowledge of, and kind of like switching back between those two instruments mid-song. And I guess that's kind of a rare combination of skill sets.
Yeah, I was going to say there probably too many people didn't show up that fit. That's a very niched thing.
Right. So Jess thought of me, put my name into Johnny. Johnny called me, and then I showed up and auditioned. So it's all, I'd say, like, if there was a way to describe it, the way to get work here is through word of mouth.
To know a lot of people. So is there, like, in Nashville, is there it would almost make sense to have like a professional networking sort of, how does...
Absolutely, man. It's all about networking, like, and being cool, and like, anytime you get a chance to play your instrument, you like play the living snot out of it, but appropriately.
Yeah.
Situation, and then like being like fun, and like leaving a good impression on people. There's definitely an art to it, and I'm grateful to have had opportunities to like at least start to develop that in some way.
Yeah, I always have this expression, you can't connect the dots going forward. But it's always really interesting to look backwards and see how these dots connected, and like this guy knew about you and told you another guy. I mean, it's almost amazing that the connections get made like that, but that's reality, how things work.
Yeah, it can be hard to explain, and I think that's part of the reason, like, when there is no work, it's very frustrating, or at least it has been very frustrating for me, because it's like you're at the bottom of this hole and there's no foreseeable way out.
Yeah.
By anything you can do on your own, someone just kind of has to come pick you up.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. Like, there are definitely things you can do to make put yourself in a position to be hired, but it still kind of comes down to somebody else's decision.
No, I can totally get it, because it's not dissimilar to running a business. There's going to be some times where it's fallow, seasons are just not there, but at least in a business there's always certain things you could do, people you could ask, run a new marketing campaign, come up with a new product, develop a new pitch.
Right.
It's really,
and there are parallels to all of those things. Like I have certain things that, like, if work isn't, like, the music industry kind of like shuts down in December, especially in Nashville. And so there's not going to be much going on then, but there are some things I can do that I know of and that I've developed that I like can count on during that time, teaching lessons or, like whatever. And that's not to say that teaching lessons is, that's a whole nother thing. Like, that's
yeah. No, I don't think it's coming across like teaching lessons is like a secondary thing. It's like, it's another way to pick up money, and that's great.
Right.
That's really good. Well, it's good. So you're in Nashville. Where are you originally from? Like, where'd you grow up?
Originally from Denver, Colorado area, a suburb called Aurora, southeast of Denver.
Very cool. I love Colorado.
Now, I was born in Madison, Wisconsin, but my family moved to Colorado before I was 1. So I pretty much tell people I'm from Colorado with some Wisconsin roots.
I was just out there last year for the first time. It was beautiful, man. Really pretty.
Yeah, I think it's the most beautiful place on earth.
And you know what? People that live there, I hear that consistently from everybody, man. So
yeah, it's a good one.
What was, when you were growing up, what was your earliest exposure to music? And like, what do you remember about that?
Man, it would have been the records my parents were listening to. My dad loved to listen to like Kansas and Styx and Boston, and he would put those records on, and my mom, on the other hand, really loved a lot of country music, and unknowingly did me a huge service in exposing me to everyone from Trisha Yearwood to the Dixie Chicks to Josh Turner or whatever, I was growing up, I'd say, like, particularly the Dixie Chicks. I knew their records, Fly in Wide Open Spaces, before I came to Nashville without really even knowing it, but I was like this angsty teen or whatever in middle school, and one of my friends gave me a burned copy of American Idiot, like day.
Yeah, sure.
And that like sent me off, and I loved it. And I listened to that record for hours and turned on channel 93.3 on the radio and listened to them. And that exposed me to everyone from like Stone Temple Pilots to Sublime to Taking Back Sunday to My Chemical Romance to like Soundgarden and Rage Against the Machine. And I got so into all this music, and it was all like super formative, and that's probably what made me like think like, man, like I've been playing piano for a long time, started piano lessons in first grade, and I was like, man, like I want to play the freaking guitar, like awesome. And then it was all over. It was all downhill from there.
So when did you start playing guitar?
It would have been right around 6th grade.
Oh wow, so that's like 11, 12?
I guess, yeah, something like that. Somewhere in there, I would think.
And like,
you convert grade levels to ages.
Yeah, I always remember 9 is 3rd grade. That's the only thing I know. That's my barometer. And 18 is 12th grade.
Right, yeah. So I think you'd be right on that.
Something close.
Yeah, somewhere around 10, 11.
When did you, what point in time did you know I want to do this, like this is my mission here. I don't want to just play this casually on the weekends. I want to be a professional guitar player, a professional musician, keyboard player, whatever.
I would think that became clear to me probably around the time I was like 15 or 16. I had started like getting into jazz music by that point and gotten really into. Sorry, I was really into jazz music by that point, and also kind of had my rock band with some of my friends back home. And we were working really hard, and I was starting to learn like that, like you can work, like you can make money doing this. It's not easy, but like it exists. And I think when I started thinking about it, it was like, yeah, like I want to do this. Like I really like playing, and I think I like have a decent shot. I can work pretty hard on this. And since I had been in like music lessons and playing from a young age, like the idea of bettering myself on my instrument and eventually getting to the point where I could like do the thing was it just made sense to me. This is a thing that I know how to do,
Were your folks supportive of that?
Yeah,
very cool.
Absolutely. And I'm extremely blessed. I'm very grateful for that. They were all about, I guess I shouldn't say they were all about it, but they never once said like there's no way this is going to work for you. They always said like, if this is what you want to do, like, go for it.
So is there like an holy shit moment where you've been working and playing on the weekends, and once you said, yeah, I think I want to do this and I have a good shot, was there like a holy shit moment where you said, oh, this is actually happening now?
Not really. No, it's such a gradual process that like some of the details kind of get lost in I don't want to say the monotony of it, but the gradual development of your career. It can like maybe like you look back on, like I'll look back on the year ago today and I'll be like, man, like I'm a little bit further ahead, like, but over the course of all this time, like it slowly gets better. So I think that those oh shit moments, as far as like, oh shit, like what the heck am I doing with my life? I haven't had any of those. I've had like, oh my gosh, like this is actually like this is really cool. I've had that kind of moment.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant. Like holy shit, this is actually happening. Like was there any like particular gig or concert or a particular bit of feedback that when you said, man,
right? Yeah,
it's like you're trying to. I think any business is like this, and you're trying to get momentum to get the plane off the ground, and all of a sudden at a certain point you're like, oh my god, the wheels are off and we're propelling here. Yeah,
I'd say the first time that I did any serious long-term road work was a moment like that. That was with an artist named DNK. They're a pop duo, or they were. And we did a 2-month-long deal on the West Coast and back through to Nashville. And that was really cool. It was a very formative experience, and it was like, man, like what the heck? Like we're actually like driving through Oregon right now in a van. This is like, I've arrived.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's what I meant.
Man, like we were very far from arriving, but man, we had an amazing time, and for all of us, it was an extremely formative experience, and a lot of, those guys are still very close friends of mine. And then actually the other day, like, I think I haven't had, and I'm looking forward to in life, and I hope I get to experience like a couple of these, like I want to play Red Rocks, and I really would love to do like the Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, Today Show stuff in New York, and a lot of my friends have done those, and it's awesome, and I really hope that I get to get a chance to go to bat and step up for those. But I haven't had those like, wow, like I just played Madison Square Garden, like in my career where I'm still like, and I don't know if you ever get away from, like, I'm still playing like the medium level, large level clubs, sometimes like an arena that's like a smaller arena or whatever. And it's kind of like this whole mix of things, but I think there's such a beauty in this. And I think one of the cool moments for me the other day, actually, I was just like, I had a rehearsal with my friend Quentin that morning for some music that we're working on, and then I went straight to this other thing for this artist and straight to something else for an artist. And like yesterday I had just gotten in town from radio tour, and then I went and saw a show, and then I had to get ready for the church gig, and like just this like moment of like, holy cow, like I'm a working professional musician, and like I have a lot of things going on, and not one of them is like playing Madison Square Garden, but like I'm a working professional musician, and this is really cool. Like this is awesome. Like I'm so grateful. Like when did this happen? Who said I could do this? Like who green lighted this shit? Like
that's awesome. Well, this I remember a story a guy told me. I was in the hospital waiting room one time many years ago, and I met this guy there, very nonchalant, almost like sort of boring guy. But we just started talking, and he told me a story, and he said that he went skiing with his wife or his family one time, and he went up the ski lift, and he got to where they were going to go skiing, and he looks down and he says, "Oh my God, I can't do this." And he'd never been skiing before, and I guess he turns around to the person that was working there and he goes, I just got here, I can't do this. And the guy turned around and said to him, "Well, you don't start there."
Yeah, right.
So I've always remembered that, because I think if you're a type A person, I know myself, you want things, and I always remember that story, that no matter what you do, any new project, any new endeavor, there's you don't start usually where you want to be. That's like, there's a reason why you go to martial arts, and you start at white, and then you go to yellow, and then blah blah blah.
Right? Yeah.
And I always kept that story.
What's crazy in music is like, there are dudes I know that like will, I'm gonna say my point in what I'm about to say is that like a lot of these like what we would define as success as a musician, to like the general public might define like playing like giant stages and like living this rock and roll lifestyle or whatever, or like a lot of that stuff is very fleeting, like the fame or whatever. It's just fleeting. Like it doesn't, those things don't last. And I think that I'm trying to think of how to say this. Some of the most successful people in the music industry as musicians, will be the ones that really just like they find their joy in the music. And okay, so here's what I was going to say. Like sometimes like there'll be like, say I've been working in Nashville for 6 years. 4 of those I was in school, so I don't even know if I count those. And like I'm like, man, like I really feel like I should be like on the gig and like have like the thing and the bus and like go to this thing and that and be doing all this great stuff, and be frustrated that those things aren't happening to me. And then some dude moves to town, and like he may or may not be a better player than me. That is almost irrelevant. But like he moves to town and just gets scooped up, and suddenly he's like doing it. And like all these things that I've been like, man, like I really wanted to play Red Rocks, and now that dude's playing Red Rocks, and like he doesn't deserve it. And that's like a super common thing to feel, like to see that kind of thing happen. Like, and that's why I say it's fleeting. Like it could happen to anybody at any given moment, regardless of their level of musicians. Maybe not regardless, but
mutually exclusive of their level of musicians.
Right. Like, yeah, like it could just happen. So to put your worth into like, man, like I really want to be like on Madison Square Garden, or I keep saying Madison Square Garden, like that is, I think, unhealthy. Like really what has to be there is like a joy and total love for getting to play music for a living, which is a huge privilege. And, occasionally you get these like cool perks,
right? Like
you get to play like this crazy stage, but the real life of it is like, I'm running around town, like putting my stuff, like carrying my things, and like sometimes getting to play, and like this is awesome.
Sure. Well, plus I think everybody has their own. I mean, look, the guy who gets scooped up, you don't know what his journey was. You know. So everybody. Absolutely. I mean, it's like, you know, people are quick to say, oh, you know, any rock band, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, you pick up anybody and, you know, oh, they're an overnight sensation. No, they're not an overnight sensation. You weren't there when they were in the van with 6 of them in Pontiac, Michigan, freezing their ass off in December, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, I think...
I think my point is that, like, there's a romance to that story, then there's also, like, in reality, like, there really is the one-hit overnight thing. Like, that does happen to people. And it's not something that, as somebody who's in the struggle, or not the struggle, who's in the grind of it all, can look at that and be like, if you can't look at that and think, like, you're not good enough, or, like, you're not the right person for the job. You know, because at the end of the day, like, there is a fair amount of luck that goes into all of this.
Yes, serendipity. It's like starting a business and saying, well, look at the iPod. That really took off. Well, I mean, there are one in, you know, 100,000 or 1 million businesses that do. But if that's your frame of reference, it's probably not going to be accurate. Doesn't mean it's not possible, but it's probably not going to be accurate for the most part.
So that was all just like a super wordy of saying that what you just said. So feel free to like condense everything that I just said down into a much more manageable.
It's all good, man. What? Who are you know? You mentioned a couple of jazz guitarists, and you mentioned Coltrane. Who are your biggest influences on you guitar wise?
Okay, I'd say like even when I play guitar today, like there's a part of me that just wants to be freaking like Billy Joe Armstrong or something, like, or just girl and like just like lower the guitar strap to an unreasonable height and like just like pretend it's a punching bag and go for it. Like, and I love that. I think there's an energy and like passion that comes out in that, you know, like Johnny Greenwood type thing. Like, and there's like, you know, it's a whole other deal. Like, so I love that. And I think like when I play, like that is almost always that kind of aggressiveness and passion. Like I hope that always comes through. I think one of my biggest early on influences of like, whoa, like guitar can be like more than like just like the punk rock thing was Eric Johnson. And I got like super into Eric Johnson. That's probably why I like almost always play a Strat still. And like I learned that Cliffs of Dover thing and I spent hours and hours and hours for probably like 2 years trying to perfect that. And I never did, and I never will. And I got his records and I listened to him, and just the things that he can do like technically but still have it be incredibly musical really spoke to me, especially coming from a classical background. So seeing like this like incredible perfection on the instrument, but when you listen to interviews of him, like he is thinking very musically about it, and I think that was really inspiring, and that will continue to be inspiring. I think he's one of the great guitar players. It's hard to find guitar players that have really pushed things forward. We're just kind of playing in someone else's world. Like, what else is new under the sun? And I think Eric Johnson is one of the dudes that did push the guitar. And I think that anytime there's somebody like that that's living among us, it's like a huge gift. Right.
He didn't just reinvent something else. He literally pushed it forward.
Right.
I understand
just
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was huge, and then, you know, I really got it like with jazz, like Wes Montgomery. You can't go without mentioning Wes Montgomery and Charlie Christian, and you know, like more lately, I guess like some of my more recent like guys I've really been digging on. You know, I had a guitar teacher in school, Chip Henderson, who got me really into Jim Hall.
Who's that?
He's a jazz guitarist.
Okay.
And especially his records with Bill Evans, of which there are 4 that I'm really into. Interplay. Now I'm not going to remember the names. I'm going to blank on them. because
Was Bill Evans a drummer or a keyboard player?
Piano player.
Okay, yeah.
So Interplay, Undercurrent are the two that I probably listen to the most. And there's one more duo record and one more quintet record, and I'm not going to remember them, but because I'm a terrible student of jazz music.
No worries.
I listened to those records a whole bunch, and that, I'll never, like, I did my best Jim Hall impression, and it was pretty bad once. And then more recently, I've gotten into my buddy Adam Griffith, who's a guitar player in town. He got me really into Bobby Broom, especially his organ trio work. And then one of my favorites is Julian Lage, who to me really like bridges this gap between classical, jazz, and more recently bluegrass music and kind of like Americana stuff. And he does stuff with a guitar that like just blows me away.
And you got a very diverse, like, way out on the fringes of all these things. Really interesting.
Right. Well, I highly recommend that anybody listening to this check out all of those artists and buy their records, because they are remarkable and just really have some cool stuff to offer. And, outside of that, like, I've, obviously, like, I play in a lot of different genres, so I get, like, one of my favorite things to do, like, before I'm about to go play, like, say I'm playing, like, with Basic Printer, who's this, like, electronic indie thing. I want to play the snot out of that gig. And so what I'm going to do, like, one of my kind of pre-show rituals, if I have any, is I like to listen to that kind of music being played at its just absolute best, and especially on the guitar. So, like, I'm going to blast whatever it is in my ears, and I'm going to, like, try to get so into that and try to do it justice. So like listening to Radiohead or Jack White, like, doing this like unconventional stuff with guitar, because with that group I do all this unconventional stuff, or try to. And if I'm playing a country gig, like, I'm gonna go like listen to Guthrie Trapp, or I'm gonna listen to Brent Mason, and be like, oh gosh, like, man, I'll never pick a telly like that, but holy cow, like, this is awesome, like, I'm gonna do my best. Or Derek Trucks or whoever it is, like, I want to kill this, and I want to, like, sound as good as I can. So I think as a result of being a sideman and being a hired gun and, like, kind of working in a lot of different genres, I find that my influences end up being fairly diverse.
Which makes total sense. So I guess it's listening to these guys, it kind of almost allows you to jump off the cliff for your gig.
Yeah, in a way, that's a good way to put it. Like, just like, all right, like, I've been thinking about, like, worship music all morning because I played at church, but like, whoa, we're about to, like, play rock, so, like, let's go. Just freaking go for it.
Let's talk about some of your gear. Obviously, you're in Nashville. I'm assuming you've got a telly.
I do. I have two Telecasters. I have one that's just like a Fender American Standard from 2011. It's sitting right here. It's cool. The guys at Eastside Music Supply set it up for me, and they did a great job. And it's not my favorite instrument to play, but it definitely fills that void. I've thought about selling it before and I've played some other tellies that have really inspired me, and they've also, like, made me choke thinking about spending that kind of money.
Oh, what have you played?
So,
like some Crook or some custom stuff in Nash, some Nash. What have you played that really you like?
So there's just, like, there's all, like, Telecasters, like, I think something I've learned is, like, for guitar builders, the Telecaster is, like, the easiest way in, because it's such a simple machine. You have two pickups on a slab of wood with a bolt-on neck, like,
right.
on.
Two single coil pickups, yeah.
Right. So I've thought about, like, getting, like, something done custom, and I probably would if I were going to do a telly. My buddy Sam plays a Jazan that sounds just awesome. And then Jim plays Tom Anderson stuff, and there's all sorts of builders, but there's I'm not a vintage guitar freak, but I do like player grade vintage guitars, and something from, like, the 70s or 80s, like, I could really get into. So I'm kind of open to that. I don't know. But yeah, and then my other telly's it's a Squier kind of like a vintage reissue, I think, and it has a humbucker. Has two Duncan designed humbuckers. One of them looks like a single coil, but it's a stacked single, so it's really a humbucker. That thing just screams, and it's set up terribly, and it plays awful. And like if I want to like fight a guitar, which sometimes I do, that's right now I've got that thing strung up for like a baritone tuning, and it sounds awesome. I've got half wound Diodario, 12 through whatever gauge 12 strings on it, and it's strung super low, and like it's C standard, I think, is what I have it in, because B standard would be pushing it a bit, and it's fun, and it's a beater for sure, but I kind of like it, you know. Let's
talk amps. What is your what is if you had to go out and buy a new guitar tomorrow, money is no object, what would you get?
Right. Well, I actually like just did that. And I have a problem. I buy guitars too much, but
I never hear that out of guitarists. It's really weird.
So I just went and purchased a Gibson Les Paul Special TV Yellow double cut, and I'm really into it. I played it on a rehearsal last night. I'm playing it at a gig tomorrow, and it's like got the P90 thing going, which is a sound I haven't had before, and I'm digging it. I think I'm going to put a Bixby on it, and I'm super stoked.
Very cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. I've got a problem.
That's awesome.
I don't think you should congratulate me on that, but
I said, this is the conversation you have with every guitar player.
Right. Yeah. I guess to answer your question though, like if I were to go out and just buy something, I would really like to have a Duesenberg Star Player TV, and that's kind of a Nashville thing. Tom Bukovic uses those, and they look great. I think they sound great. They're really awesome guitars. I've also thought about getting something from PRS, but that I'm not sure if I were to go out right now, and I'd probably pick up a Duesenberg Star Player. Also, man, yeah, this is a terrible question to ask because there's so many guitars. Gretsch made a White Falcon special, limited edition recently. They only made probably 200 of them or whatever, and they had one at Corner Music down on 12th. And it was a White Falcon, but it's like a small body center block thing. A White Falcon's usually a bigger hollow body, but has a center block, so it's kind of more 335 vibe. It's going to be better with feedback. And I was so close to pulling the trigger on that, but I didn't. And I kind of wish I had.
Yeah, so but maybe you'd probably be saying that no matter what guitar you bought.
Exactly, it's a huge.
It's it's a very difficult.
I don't understand how it got to this point.
You know what? Maybe there should be a 12-step program for guitar acquisition.
Right, I could use it.
Yeah, you don't think you're alone. I think a lot of guys could. You mentioned that you're not necessarily crazy over vintage guitars, but you do like a player grade vintage. Can you elaborate on what that means?
So you have collector's grade and player grade vintage. Collector's grade would be this thing is worth putting in a case on the wall and staring at, and that's it. And then there's Carter Vintage recently had one of the original bursts, Gibson.
Right. I love that. I love that store, man. When I was in Nashville, oh my God, because people talked about a load of stores, but that was the store, man. That was. I recently bought an acoustic from them, and it was an amazing experience. Highly recommend going in there if you're visiting town. They're awesome. I'm hoping to get them on the show. In fact, I'm pretty sure I will.
Right, yeah.
I'd love to talk to those guys.
They're great. And they probably would be better to talk about this topic specifically because they specifically deal in vintage guitars. It's in their namesake. But a collector's grade vintage is you're not going to take it on the road or into a club or whatever. You may use it in the studio, or maybe it's so valuable that you don't even touch it. And I get that. There's something cool about that, and in the history of it, and we ought to respect certain instruments. But I am a working musician, and my budget is going to be limited. But the idea, there definitely is a vibe to a vintage guitar. There's no way around that. Like, a guitar that's aged is gonna play, I think, better in a lot of cases if it's taken care of. I think that an older instrument always has something to say. So a player's grade vintage might like, oh, like this like had different tuners and like it scratched up in the body, like there was a crack repair on the top and like whatever. But like it sounds great, it plays great, it's still like the guts are original. Like you're gonna get like 99% of the vibe as far as like what you're gonna hear out of the speakers.
Sure.
Like, to me, that's like totally worth it.
Right,
you know?
right.
So I have a couple instruments that would fit in that category.
Yeah, I think I know myself. I moved about 3 or 4 years ago, and we moved. We had a massive house, and when we moved, I wasn't one of these guys who was thinged himself to death, but there were certain things like, you know, I'm a copywriter. I write and I read, and
right.
I had literally maybe 2,000 books. And when we moved out, I said I got rid of probably 1,500 of them, and I said I will never collect anything again the rest of my life. It was so like. It put me off. So like when I buy guitars now, if I'm not playing them, I sell them. I have no interest collecting anything. If it's not,
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, and I'm not a professional or anything, but still, I just like to use stuff and have fun, and I had so much crap in boxes.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think instruments don't have feelings, but people do. And I think it's a disservice to somebody else who would find great joy in an instrument to just like keep it locked up.
I agree with you, man.
So,
hey, let me ask you a question, because I think this is a common frustration or question of guitars. When you're practicing, do you still practice?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. When you're practicing,
probably should do it more.
What's that? Everybody that's professional says that. But when you're practicing, what percentage of the time would you say your practices are really great? Like you play so well, like you almost sometimes, you're in the zone. You're like, holy shit, I don't even know how I did that. Average to good, or feels like things are going nowhere, where no matter, even basic stuff like you're playing a scale or, a bar chord or whatever, it's just, or solos that note for note, it's just not happening on that night. What percentage of the time are each of those? And in that last scenario, do you modify the practice, or do you just say, you know what, I'm putting the guitar down today, tomorrow will be a better day?
Right. So I'm going to provide a disclaimer right now. The answer that I'm about to give is largely dependent on how often I practice.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is not often enough. So I'm going to go ahead and say that my practice sessions are often really awesome.
Okay.
And that's because I pick up the guitar and I have no frame of reference. I'm like, pretty good. But if I were doing this for 4 hours a day like I should be, I'd probably be like, oh my God, what are you, who are you? So now I think there's some worth in that though. Back in the day, I was practicing a lot more, and I often felt like I was going nowhere. And then once I stopped practicing as much, I felt like I was going somewhere. And I think that sometimes we do over practice, and we and the way the brain works, and I think especially the way my brain works, a little bit every day is really good for me, but too much every day will fry me, and I'll be my creative output will be zero. And I think that at the heart of it, I want my music to be creative even when I am running technical exercises and stuff.
Sure.
So I want to be practicing that stuff in a creative way, because otherwise I lose focus and it doesn't do anything. It'll be wasted time, literally. So if I'm over practicing, then I'm doing myself a disservice, I guess. And finding that fine line is something everybody has to do. I have friends who are totally they get in the zone and they're just and they're incredible players and they sound great. And I have friends who don't do that as much, and they still sound great. Everyone kind of has their own path, but yeah, like I really need to practice more. I could definitely use that.
I think maybe it's like going to the gym. You know, you can, if you sit in the gym for 4 hours, doesn't necessarily mean you had 4 times a better workout. If you know,
right,
6 times if you sat there for 45 minutes.
Doing 1 hour 4 days and maybe taking a day of rest is going to yield much better results.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a firm believer in that. I really am. And also, like, practicing, there's so many things to practice. There are days where my practice consists of just sitting in front of like an effect pedal and like hitting it, trying to make it sound better. I mean, not literally hitting it, but trying to like make tones. You know, that's a huge skill. And another one would be listening. You know, maybe instead of practicing one day, you just spend an hour listening to like one of your favorite records or something that you haven't heard yet, and you learn all this stuff you didn't know. Like, I challenge anybody listening to this to go listen to Wide Open Spaces by the Dixie Chicks and listen super closely to exactly what's going on. I think Michael Rhodes is on bass on that. I'd have to double check. And Paul Worley produced that stuff, and you listen to that and you're just like, what the heck? Like, this is insane. So good. And you can gain so much from that rather than sitting in like your own bubble, like running 1, 2, 3, 4 exercises up and down the fretboard for 2 hours at like quarter note equals 200. Like,
right.
What good does that do you when you could like be listening to something that sparks your creativity?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of head work in quote practicing. Again, I'm just a guy who plays in guitar in his home office, home studio. But I've learned that it's not like taking foul shots. There's a lot of head work involved, that just to understand and think things through involved, that doesn't necessarily translate to, as you said, sitting on the fretboard. You know.
Right.
You mentioned pedals. What are like your 2 or 3 favorite or most reliable pedals that you simply like couldn't live without?
Let's see. I'm a big fan of Exotic Effects EP Booster. They're a company out of California. This little thing kind of gives you the vibe of an Echoplex preamp, and it also has a really great boost circuit in it. That partly comes from my obsession with Eric Johnson, because he runs through an Echoplex preamp. Well, he actually runs through a freaking Echoplex, an EP3. So he's getting the delay out of that. But that preamp sound helps to really shape things. And I think I play a Strat a lot. I love playing a Strat. And that little box can add a certain EQ curve to the Strat sound. Something it does with like the high end and the low end. Like it just really beefs it up.
And it's called the EP Booster?
EP Booster. And it's just a one knob little enclosure. And that thing, like I've seen, like almost everybody I shouldn't say that. A lot of people in town have them on their rigs, and some people use them like I do as like kind of a buffer at the top of the signal chain to like shape the sound of the guitar coming in and maybe compensate for differences in pickup output volume. And other people use them towards the end of their overdrive chain to like freaking like give that boost and let it rock. And they're a very, very useful pedal for being just a one knobber. So I love that thing. Let's see. I love. I recently picked up an Eventide H9, which is this like little spaceship. Like it probably could go to the moon. And essentially it's a multi-effect box. So I guess maybe that's cheating to say that's something I'd like live without, because it's like, you can do anything with it. Like it can do anything from an overdrive to a delay. It's using all of Eventide's algorithms and stuff, which are famous and on tons of records. So, and I use that thing for its delays mainly. And sometimes it's reverbs and sometimes it's like super weird garbled sounds. So I really like that thing. And then I also, let's see, I have this giant, this like goes back to my Eric Johnson obsession. I've got this like thing called a BK Butler tube driver, which is like this giant like mammoth overdrive pedal that has a 12AX7 tube in it, and Eric Johnson uses it into a like dimed 100-watt Marshall plexi head and gets like that violin tone. So I bought it a couple years back thinking like I was going to get that. And as you would expect, like you're not like buying gear doesn't make you sound like Eric Johnson. And I learned that. But I think the box has a really great overdrive sound, and I like that's kind of my essential like lead guitar sound. So that thing, like even though it's like maybe a little bit dated, that thing like, and it takes up way too much room on the board, that thing like has never left my pedal board. So
and I'm looking at it here, the BK Butler 2 driver. You know, I think there's a lot. There's several companies that have tubes in their pedals now.
Right. Yeah.
Like I think Black Star's got one. Friedman I think just came out with one.
Right.
So I think that's
yeah, it's cool.
Unusual as it used to
Gives it a vibe, but definitely like way more power. Takes up a lot more room though. You know, there's great overdrive pedals. Like the guys at XTS Tone Solutions in Nashville have some really great sounding overdrive pedals. Walrus Audio does too. JHS makes some great stuff. Like there's so much out there. It's like almost hard to go wrong and almost overwhelming to choose.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's absolutely. There's infinite pedals. So you've toured a lot and gone a lot of places. What is some of the favorite places you've been to?
I love going to New York and Manhattan. I think that city's so unique and so much fun. I could never live there. Part of the reason I think I could never live there is because I get so excited. Like I think I am so fascinated by the infrastructure and like the trains. And so like unlike a New Yorker, I'm always like so excited to get on the subway. I'm like, holy cow, like this like we're like in a train under the city and there's a bunch of trains under the city and it works and like none of them ever like crash into each other and like hopefully not, and you know all this stuff just works. That's so cool. Whereas like anyone who's lived in New York for more than 2 months is going to be like, this place smells.
I'm from there, so you don't usually it's a tool,
right?
The subway's a tool.
I just can't see it that way. I'm like, holy, this is unbelievable.
It really is unbelievable, though. I mean, the infrastructure there is tremendous, and it is unbelievable if you stop and pause and look at it. Yeah, it is a very cool place.
So there's that. I love that place. I love the Pacific Northwest.
Oh yeah,
that's great,
gorgeous.
And honestly, like anytime I can go to Colorado is amazing.
Your family's still there?
Yep.
Cool. Very cool.
So anytime I get to go through there, like even just driving or to play, like that's got to be my favorite place to be.
What's the favorite part of what you do? What's your favorite part of what you do?
I guess on a very specific note, and this doesn't happen that much, but I find this moment to be very sacred, and that is occasionally, if you're lucky and the stars line up and you're playing music or you're part of some sort of art thing, theater, music, whatever, you might get the chance to like hear silence in a room full of a ton of people, and that might be like, so specifically with music, like if an artist is singing a powerful ballad and it peaks in the bridge and there's like a moment where the instruments drop out and it's just the vocal and then the vocal stops and there's like a moment of everyone just like mouth dropped, like what, like this is real, and then it comes back in, or maybe it's at the end of a song. You know, it tends to come on ballads, I'd say, but that moment when you're lucky enough to get it, I think is one of the most sacred things we can experience on earth.
Very cool, man. That was not an expected answer. That's a very is there a least favorite part of what you do?
I try to stay in pretty good shape, and being on the road is not good for that. So, for instance, we were out for like a week and a half, and I screwed up my back really bad, the seats we were in, and that like really like made me doubt what I do. Like I was like, God, I can't like do this to my body. Like just sit in this van or whatever, like or bus or airplane, like whatever it is, it's a steel tube filled with people traveling at least 2 miles per hour. Like, like so I like traveling a lot, but sometimes it gets like, I don't want to just sit here for 6 hours.
Yeah. So being on the road is at times the least favorite part, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, just like the logistics of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes. On the other hand, if I get to go to a road trip with a friend or family or girlfriend or whatever, like that situation is awesome.
Right. Yeah, totally.
I'll sit in the steel tube for that and gladly. But
right, hear you. Hey, before we go, I got to ask you. Tell me one or two cool, goofy, or like just ridiculous, absurd stories from touring, and you can keep the names to the. You can. You don't have to reveal who did what.
Right.
What are some like the?
I haven't had like too many, and I kind of pride myself on not having like too many. Like went to the. Jason Isbell has a song called Super 8 that is like the whole band went to the bar and like somebody like stepped up and like the bass player knocked him out with a coffee cup or like and it all and like everyone like threw up in the morning or whatever. Like I haven't had too many of those moments, and I try to keep it pretty professional on the road. But I guess let's see. One time we were driving, and this is more of like a ridiculous, like, oh gosh, like being on the road is crazy. We were driving back from a show with this pop act D&K, and we were driving and we were coming in from like Omaha, Nebraska area. So we're coming down south on I-29, coming into Kansas City. We're north of Kansas City. This is on like Thursday or Friday. Mm-hmm. And we have shows in Georgia starting on Monday. And the plan was to get home, have a couple days, then hit the road again, right? Pretty normal set. Well, our driver like starts noticing a little wobble in the van, and now we had recently, like on the way to Omaha, we had to have a tire replaced. Like, what's going on? So he pulls off. He manages to get us to a rest stop, like a pull off, like here's a bathroom type thing, and we go outside, like, and like sure enough we have a flat tire. It's like, oh gosh, well now we're in the middle of nowhere, like we got to do this. So we get the jack out.
Yeah, Omaha ain't New York.
Right, so we're north. We're north of Kansas City. We're not quite in Omaha. Not that detail is super relevant, but man, like we had some issues with the jack. We finally get the thing jacked up, and we go to change we pull the, like, the tire off or whatever, and this dude rolls up. We've been like struggling. This dude rolls up in a red truck, and it's like a roadside assistance type thing, like not AAA, like a small
tow truck.
Right. Well, he just has like a bunch of stuff in his, like, he's got an air compressor and like a, all that stuff. And he's like, well, I got a compression wrench. Like, I can do this for you guys real quick. I see you're in a bind. Like, man, that would be awesome. Like, we really got to get on the road. And so he just hops out, rigs up his thing, starts the air compressor, goes in, like NASCARs that thing in. And we're like, all right, awesome. Like, let's get in the van. Let's go. So we get in the van. We put it in reverse. We drive the van back about 5 feet, and the thing lurches. It stops, and it doesn't go any further. Like, what the heck? And we were like out there looking, and like it won't roll past this certain point. We're trying to figure out, and we think like, well, let's just like floor it and like really let it go. That was the worst decision. The exact same thing. It did not roll. Like this is a diesel Sprinter. Like, we put that engine in, and like it just would not go past. And so we have to call a tow truck. And long story short, because this is a long story, like, tow truck comes. You can only fit 2 people in the cab of a tow truck, so the rest of us just sit down. Like, we watch our only means of transportation go over the horizon. We're just sitting there at a rest stop in the middle of nowhere, totally alone. Like,
was it cold, or was it at least a
little? It was like summer, so it was fun. We're lucky. And I had family in the area. They were actually generous enough to come grab us. And
cool.
Well, what ended up happening is when he had drilled that, when he used that compression wrench, he had like the what do you call them? The screws. There's actually a name for those.
The drill bit?
No. The screws like that. Like
socket?
No, like just the screws that go into the thing, like the screws or whatever, like the tire lugs, lugs, lug nuts. They were too long for that tire. Like, there was a difference. So he had used lug nuts that were too long. That thing had implanted into the brake drum, sheared off, and like destroyed the entire brake housing. And I mean, it like when we got to the shop, like, it looked like that thing had been in like an ultimate chopper blender. Like, the thing was destroyed. And this is a Sprinter. Like, this is a large vehicle, you know. It's not like a toy car. And I mean, we had to rent a vehicle. We stayed a couple nights. They weren't, it's a Mercedes, so they got to import the part. So we had to, like, this was early on in like the days of this group, so money was short, and like we had to like pile into a Grand Caravan and drive to Nashville, and with just the gear we could bring, because we couldn't fit all the gear, and leave the van there to get fixed. We did this entire run in Georgia in like this small vehicle, just cramped, like squeezed in next to each other. We had a good time, but then we had to fly someone out to Kansas City to drive the van back eventually.
Wow, what a hassle.
It was crazy. Now the van like went on to do like 2 or 3 more good years of service. So it was, but man, yeah, like stuff like that was just wild.
Yeah, I could see why touring is a bit of a grind. Why it might be the least favorite part of what you do.
Right, like that's just a situation no one wants to find themselves in. But it's a story I will always tell. I'm trying to think of a more positive one, but let's see.
Any debauchery?
Honestly, man, like a lot of the people I work with play it pretty safe. They like, this is a job. Like we have a job to do. We're going to come in and do the job. Like, maybe we'll go get a beer or something afterwards or whatever. Like, you know, we've had some fun nights in New York or whatever, but it's never been like anything like, you know, like anything to not tell your mom about. And that's just kind of the way I live.
That's great. Yeah, like, that's cool. You have a longer, healthier career like that.
Right, because I want to be doing this for a very long time. Like, I love music. I want to play for the rest of my life. So, you know, that's not to say I don't like go out and get a drink with friends or whatever, or like with the artist or, yeah, man. I mean, I guess that's about. Unless you have any further questions.
No, that's all good. Hey, I know. First of all, I thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to doing this again in like another 2 years when you're at that next level, and then I'll have to go through a booking agent and to get a bit of your time, and I won't be able to have this much time. So, but I am looking forward to that. But I know. I
hope you don't have to go through a booking agent.
I have your number. I'll just text you. But I know you're super busy, but once in a while you do open up for lessons.
Right.
If somebody wants to contact you about lessons.
Yeah, I love teaching, and I do Skype lessons. I do in-person lessons in Nashville. My email address for that is peterferguson9, the numeral 9, peterferguson9@gmail.com.
Awesome.
And you can also keep up with me on my Instagram page at same handle, Peter Ferguson 9.
That's Ferguson. Peter
Ferguson.
And is there some videos of you playing on your Instagram?
I sometimes post stuff like that.
Great.
Yeah, I'm not like I don't like do that every day. A lot of times my Instagram will be like pictures of food and pictures of dogs. But I like taking pictures of cities and stuff. So, but I also like I'll do that occasionally, and you know. So yeah, that's
very cool.
That's me in a nutshell, I guess.
Awesome. PeterFerguson9@gmail.com. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your help. I had fun. You're a super deep, introspective guy, and I really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm expecting big things from you. So great talking to you, and we'll talk to you again on the flip side.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate you having me.
You got it. Hey, thanks very much for listening. You can sign up to get notified of future episodes on our website at everyonelovesguitar.com. Now go play your guitar and have fun. Till next time, I'm out. Peace. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.